Clara's vision of Annette in hell. Clara and Annette, both single Catholics in their early 20s, worked adjacent to each other, employees of a commercial firm in Germany. Although they were never very close friends, they shared a courteous mutual regard which led to an exchange of ideas and, eventually, of confidences. Clara professed herself openly religious, and felt it her duty to instruct and admonish Annette when the latter appeared excessively casual or superficial in religious matters. In due course, Annette married and left the firm. Clara spent the autumn of that year on holiday at Lake Garda. About the middle of September she received a letter from Annette's mother, where it was written, "Your friend Clara was the victim of an auto accident. She was buried yesterday at Waldfriedhof." Clara was frightened since she knew her friend Annette was not very religious. She wondered, was Annette prepared to appear before God? Dying suddenly just like that, what had happened to her? The next day she attended Mass, received Holy Communion, and prayed fervently for her friend to rest in peace. The following night, at 10 minutes after midnight, the vision took place. In the vision I saw my friend Annette, who called me and said, "Clara, do not pray for me. I am in hell, do not pray for me. I am in hell. If I tell you this and speak at length about it, do not think it is because of our friendship. We here in hell do not love anyone. I do this as under constraint. In truth, I would like to see you two come to this state of suffering where I must remain forever. Perhaps that angers you, but here we all think that way. Our wills are hardened in evil, in what you call evil, even when do something good, as I do now, opening your eyes about hell. It is not because of a good intention." Do you still remember our first meeting 4 years ago? You were then 23, you gave me some helpful advice, then I praised your love of your neighbor. Ridiculous. Your help was mere coquetry. Here we do not acknowledge any good in anybody. Do you remember what I told you about my youth? Now I am painfully compelled to fill in some of the gaps. According to the plan of my parents, I should not have existed. A misfortune brought about my conception. My 2 sisters were 14 and 15 when I was born. I wish that I had never existed. I wish that I could now annihilate myself. Escape these tortures. No pleasure would equal that, with which I would abandon my existence, as a garment of ashes which is lost in nothingness, but I must continue to exist as I chose to make myself as a ruined person. When father and mother, still young, left the country or the city, they had lost touch with the church and were keeping company with irreligious people. My mother attended Sunday Mass a couple of times a year, but she never taught me to pray. Instead, she was completely taken up with the daily cares of life. Although our situation was not bad, I refer to prayer, Mass, church with a very strong repugnance. I hate all that, as I hate those who go to church, and in general every human being and everything. Every remembrance of things lived or known is, for us, a piercing flame. In each remembrance, good and bad, we see the way in which the grace of God was present, the grace that we despised or ignored. What a torture is this! We do not eat, we do not sleep, we do not walk, chained with howling and gnashing of teeth. We look appalled at our ruined life, hating and suffering. Do you hear? We here drink hat like water. Above all we hate God. With great reluctance do I force myself to make you understand. The blessed saints in heaven must love God because they see Him without veil, in all His dazzling beauty, that makes their bliss indescribable. We knows this, and the knowledge of this makes us furious. Men on earth, who know God from nature and from revelation, can love Him, but they are not compelled to do so. The believer, I say this with gnashing of teeth, who contemplates Christ on the cross with arms extended, will end by loving Him. But he whom God approaches only in the final storm, as punisher, as just avenger, because he was rejected by Him, such a person cannot but hate God with all the strength of his wicked will. We died with willful resolve to be separated from God. Do you now understand why hell lasts forever? It is because our wills were fixed for eternity at the moment of death. We had made our final choice. Our obstinacy will never leave us. Under compulsion, I must add that God is merciful even towards us. I affirm many things against my will and must choke the torrent of abuses I should like to vomit out. God was merciful to us by not allowing our wicked wills to exhaust themselves on earth as we should have been prepared to do. This would have increased our faults and our pains. He caused us to die before our time, as in my case, or had other mitigating circumstances intervene, when a sinner die and get closer, and this approach cause us a greater pain than that of a burning furnace would cause you, for the sinner is exposed to God's holiness. The important thing is that we were not allowed to receive communion until the age of 12. By then I was already absorbed in worldly amusements and found it easy to set aside without scruple the things of God. Thus I attached no great importance to my first communion. Those who are doomed are even furious that many children go to church. We do all we can to make people believe that children have insufficient knowledge at that age. They must first commit some mortal sins, then the white particle will not do so much damage to our cause as when faith, hope and charity, these things, received in baptism, are still alive in their hearts. Once you warned me, Anne, if you do not pray, you'll go to perdition. I used to pray very little indeed, and even this unwillingly. You were then only too right. All those who burn in hell did not pray or did not pray enough. Prayer is the first step towards God, and it is the decisive step. Devotion to God rescues from the devil numberless souls whom sin would infallibly give to him. I continue my story, consumed with rage and only because I have to. To pray is the easiest thing man can do on earth, and God has tied up the salvation of each one exactly to this very easy thing. To him who prays with perseverance little by little, God gives so much light, so much strength, that even the most debased sinner will at the end come back to salvation. During the last years of my life I did not pray any more, so I lack those graces without which nobody can be saved. Here we no longer receive graces. Moreover, should we receive them, we would cynically refuse them. All the fluctuations of earthly existence have ceased in this other life. For years I was living far away from God, for, in the last call of grace I decided against God. I never believed in the influence of the devil, and now I affirm that he has strong influence on the persons who are in the condition in which I was then. Only many prayers, others and mine own united with sacrifices and penances, could have snatched me from his grip, and even this only little by little. If there are only few externally obsessed, there are very many internally possessed. The devil cannot steal a free will from those who give themselves to his influence, but in punishment of their, so to speak, methodical apostasy from God, he allows the devil to nest in them. I hate the devil too, and yet I am pleased about him, because he tries to ruin all of you, he and his satellites, the spirits fallen with him at the beginning of time. There are millions of them. They roam around the earth, as thick as a swarm of flies, and you do not even notice it. It is not reserved to us damned to tempt you, but to the fallen spirits. In truth, every time they drag down here to hell a human soul, their own torture is increased. But what does one not do for hatred? Deep down I was rebelling against God. Dresses, luxurious furniture, places of entertainment, picnics and trips by car and similar things were more important for me. It was a year of pleasure on earth, the one that passed from my marriage to my sudden death. Internally, of course, I was never happy, although externally at ease. There was always something indeterminate inside that gnawed at me. Unexpectedly I had an inheritance from my aunt, Lot. My husband succeeded in increasing his wages to a considerable figure, and so I was able to furnish our new home in an attractive way. Religion did not show its light, but from afar off, pale, feeble and uncertain, I used to give free vent to my ill humor about some medieval representations of hell in cemeteries or elsewhere, in which the devil is roasting souls in red burning coals, while his companions with long tails drag new victims to him. Clara. One can be mistaken in depicting hell, but never can one exaggerate. I tell you, the fire of which the Bible speaks does not mean the torment of the conscience. Fire is fire. What he said, "Away from me, you accursed ones, into eternal fire," is to be understood literally. How can the spirit be touched by material fire? You will ask, how can your soul suffer on earth when you put your finger on the flame? In fact, the soul does not burn, and yet what torture all the individual feels. Our greatest torture consists in the certain knowledge that we shall never see God. How can this torture us so much, since on earth we are so indifferent? As long as the knife lies on the table it leaves you cold. You see how keen it is, but you do not feel it. Plunge the knife into the flesh and you will start screaming in pain. Now we feel the loss of God. Before we only thought of it. Not all the souls suffer to the same degree. With how great a wickedness and how more systematically one has sinned, the more weighs on him the loss of God and the more the creature he abused is choking him. The lost believer suffer the most because he had received and despised more graces and more light. He who knew more suffers more cruelly than he who knew less. He who sinned out of malice suffers more keenly than he who sinned out of weakness, but nobody suffers more than he deserves. Oh, if that were not true, I should have a motive to hate.